Happy Wealth Wednesday, Julie. I'm so excited to have you here today. This has been a new introduction, and I'm just so inspired by what you've unlocked for this whole generation of people entering their careers, often for the first time and often before they even have graduated college. So I can't wait to dive in on like your story and how you're actually like creating and defining wealth for these students at the earliest moments. So I would love to just get your introduction. Where are you calling from? Where are you from? And what are you up to these days?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I love these types of conversations and so appreciate women supporting women. It's the best part of building a business. So thank you. My background has been in building brands and communities for college students, or particularly Gen Z. And I spent some time at Spotify and Snapchat earlier in my career on kind of the sales marketing side of things, and started my first business, which is an experiential agency focused towards college students. And then currently run my business called HomeFromCollege. And we are a career development platform built specifically for Gen Z and serving as the connector between students and companies. And we really call ourselves, we call it GAS, Gen Z Access as a Service. So supporting big and small businesses with the ability to connect to Gen Z and college students with the hybrid of marketing and recruiting needs.
I love it. I love your origin story so much. So I can't wait to dive into that, like how you changed and transformed a challenge into like a massive opportunity with everything that's been happening. So excited to dive in there. But the first question we ask everyone, because I think it's such an equalizer, and especially for students as they're probably just getting started in this world. Do you remember what your first ever investment was and what or who got you started?
So this is actually a point of contention in my family. It's actually quite funny. So I was always really passionate about the fashion industry, and I love design and retail. And I initially thought I would work in fashion PR and realized that I'm just not cut out for that world. But when I spent some time working at Spotify, I ended up saving up some money for my first time in a real substantial way. And there was this YSL bag that I had spotted for a long time. And the reason I say it was an investment was because it was the first time I put my money towards something that I could tangibly see the result in quickly, which was important to me in that younger instant gratification phase. And I purchased this expensive bag, and I still have it and wear it and use it. And it represents that first moment in my life that I had more than I ever did before and could use it to represent something tangible in my life. But my family didn't necessarily align with my choice in terms of where I and how I spent the money, but it's come around to be a really great token and momentous moment from an earlier point in my career.
I love that so much. I would love to hear your origin story and share that with people listening, because it's really interesting. The question of how and why you got into your space, and you could just share more about how you really took that journey from like experiential into now this really interesting platform.
When I spent time at Snapchat, I realized, and this was really at the key moment of monetization on Snapchat, how much companies were spending to reach this younger demographic and how it was this large question mark. And the numbers that I would see were pretty astronomical. But I have always had this thesis that nothing is more important than human connections and relationships with people. So I saw an opportunity to take the ethos of companies who were doing sometimes in-person activations elsewhere. We created Wave as an access point for companies to directly market to Gen Z through these physical 40-foot trailer activations. And we built relationships with over 100 college campuses across the country so that brands like Shopify and Refinery29 and Google could come onto campus and activate. But the way we tailored it was to be student first and educational driven, so that this was not just a, hey, sign up for, Shopify so that you start your business. This is, let's teach you the foundations of what building a business are, and that you can use our tool Shopify to help you. And that was a really interesting differentiator. But married the needs of companies wanting to reach the demo and providing value to the consumer, which has always been at the core of what I've been really passionate about. Even prior to the pandemic, had even taken a more capital intensive physical approach and bet on in-person activations. We were actually building permanent physical spaces on college campuses. We had a number of leases signed across the country where we're going to create almost like Soho House meets WeWork meets The Wing, but specifically for college students in physical spaces. And March 15th, when the world completely turned around, I said to my co-founder and my team, there's no way everything we just spent the last year doing will ever exist. Let's get out of everything we did. And I said, hey, but I think, every college student just went home from college. And there was a lot of other catastrophic things happening in the world that people weren't as stressed about what college students were feeling and experiencing. It was more life or death at that moment. But I saw this moment and opportunity to say, can we be the place that is a home for career for Gen Z and college students? And we threw up a landing page to HomeFromCollege.com, and it exploded. The resonance in terms of being a place to start your career and having a home for where you belong in a time where everyone was displaced really resonated, particularly with people who are going to college to start something new and start a new experience. And here they are home in their childhood beds again. So it was a moment that we were able to really lean in and take this pain point first approach to serve them.
It's so huge. I mean, I think it goes to show how when you really touch something, that product market fit, and that's like the more technical business way of looking at it, but really like strike a chord with a group of people and what they're feeling, it can have a massive effect. And just to like really elevate what you're showing here, like this wasn't just like a landing page and like a few thousand people, it was like hundreds of thousands of people rallied around this vision of like, where do I belong and where is this destination for me in the chaos of the world at that time and now continuing. So it's really special. So, I mean, that leads perfectly into this question of, what role do you feel you play in the wealth space and why is it important?
I think the concept of wealth has evolved so much over the last 3 years as transparency to salaries, how internships that are not compensated have become federally illegal, that Gen Z is advocating for what they financially think they deserve, and companies having to respond to that. And I think in last is that this concept of your career is kind of unstable, where we're seeing huge hiring freezes and firing sprints, but then a huge need to acquire new talent. It's just a really evolving ecosystem. So I think wealth is in that same moment where people realize they need to have multiple streams of income, that Gen Z particularly always needs to be paid for things, and they'll make sure they are, and just being transparent about that whole process. So one of our core products in Home From College, our platform, is the gig. And the gig is the way in which companies and students connect through different opportunities. And our platform is very student first in the sense that there is transparency in where you stand in the applicant pool if you are a top applicant. And in that same vein, it will say how many hours this work will take you and what the compensation is right up front in the beginning. And we found that resonates so much because people need to plan for their lives financially and from a point of stability. And that is a theme within Gen Z, but I think a theme that more companies will begin to adopt as people are looking for transparency in where they stand financially compared to others and where they want to be in their lives. So we're doing a series right now called Female Futures, and it's a scalable mentor program where we're combining groups of 5 to 7 students with very successful mentors like Rebecca Minkoff and Heidi Zak and Asia Mayrock and people with big platforms. And the number one question we hear from students is imposter syndrome. What if I don't have the skills? I just actually got placed in a gig, but I don't think I'm actually capable of doing it. And our whole thesis is micro experiences translate the trajectory of your life. And that's the case because we learned that 90% of college students graduate without ever having an internship. So with the numbers so large, it's clear that how would you feel like you could do a great job in your first job, or how would you even know how to get a job if you've never been in a professional environment before? So these micro experiences are the foundation of teaching you how to build relationships in the first format you've ever done professionally, and also showing you what you like and don't like. And by making it more accessible, by making it more scalable, it's giving that foundational level of confidence and relationship access that doesn't typically exist. And that can, of course, and I'm sure in your experiences and anyone else who's listening, have had those moments where it was, if I didn't do this, I don't know where my life would have been. And we're hoping to make that start earlier in people's careers.
And I'd love to hear, what do you think has been the most exciting thing that you've learned that you would want others to know?
Every company is better off by having their target audience sitting at the table with them as they're making critical decisions. Previously, it hasn't been that scalable to get access to your audience and bring them to the table. And our whole thesis is, if we can make it more affordable and more scalable in a SaaS capacity, to say, I want to reach surfers in Southern California who are passionate about sustainability, who are finance majors, that you can sit with them in a room virtually for 45 minutes and run your campaign and test them. That will be a game changer in the resonance of what you're outputting, because that's the biggest thing when brands are tone deaf to their audience, that they don't know how to connect and build value. We built our platform as to be very student first. The whole experience when you go on HomeFromCollege.com is you feel like you're talking to your cool older sister. And that was a persona we defined within this group. So when we initially started building Home From College, when we had no idea what we were aligning with, we realized we didn't want to be your parent telling you to get a job. We didn't want to be the university that felt like an authority figure in a negative way. We wanted to embody this cool older brother or sister that's someone you trust and want to spend time with and could help you but not be overbearing. We have groups of between 50 and 100 students we meet with bi-weekly to talk about new product features that we're launching, to get their opinion. Companies can do this today on our platform is through the gigs. So really frequently we work with businesses. Beyond Meat is doing this with us right now. We're doing a large initiative with Steve Madden and a number of other brands that are saying, we're launching some big things and we want to make sure we're on track. And they'll list an advisory gig or a product testing role, and they can meet with hundreds of students that are their exact archetype by going through the back end of our platform and finding them.
It's so smart, right? And like, you actually were able to access those hundreds of people through your own gigs. They were Home From College gigs at the time, and now obviously have expanded to brands. So, because I think that can often be a question for founders, like, how do you get the time and how do you build these user groups? And it's like, well, you have them, and now can you just align the incentives to have them engage with you? So it's really special. I'm really inspired by the way you guys have built, and I'm curious if there's a person or company that inspires you right now in the space, and why.
I'm very inspired by CPG brands that have built really strong communities. And I think particularly the brands that have cracked TikTok, because there's a lot that we can learn from them in terms of listening to their audience, being on the main stage of potential access, but doing anything they can to figure it out. And the way that they collaborate with other organizations is super powerful, and harnessing a community and audience and taking your perspective and applying it to other brands. And I think typically consumer brands do a really great job at that, but we're entering this next evolution to see what that looks like in fostering community and trust.
And so what advice would you give to someone getting started?
I would say ambassador programs are our number one ask. And we have done it personally for ourselves and basically cracked the code. And now we've taken that framework to help guide other businesses to approach that same strategy. And the overall thing that I would really consider is thinking about what your actual goals are in terms of engaging with college students, because the BS meter is through the roof. Incentivizing them for just a sales commission is not going to fly. And I think one of the reasons successful programs do well is because the students feel like an extension of your team. And whenever we build and support these companies and creating these programs, we typically do them in a three-pronged approach. Number one is starting with an advisory group of 15 to 20 students that help you build the playbook for what it means to take your brand and bring it to a student audience. And then building out what we call the campus team lead, which is a student or a person who has real leadership capabilities, can put their foot down and say, I can rally a group of 5 to 7 students and they'll listen to me and I have confidence in management. And establishing a group of around 50 or so of those leaders who represent all different campuses. And then from there, we typically build out the growth side of it, which is around, I'd say around 300 students that report into those leaders within different regions, but they all level up to you, the company. And there has to be these touch points monthly or bi-weekly that allow them to see their impact translating to your business, whether it's sales, whether it's content, whether it's strategy, so that they know what they're working towards is making an impact. And if you make them feel that way, and it's true, you're getting your value, but so are they, because they're becoming an extension of you, which is the best way to empower young people to be your consumers and also, mobilize your community.
And this is all so awesome. Like, how can we keep in touch with both you personally as a founder? Because I think your insights and your lessons are so valuable, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to follow that. And then Home From College, how can we keep in touch with what you guys are launching and building?
Yeah, so personally, I am Julia Haber pretty much everywhere. We are spending time really investing on LinkedIn and TikTok to try and make those tangible pieces of advice on TikTok, particularly for college students, and then on LinkedIn as a platform to provide these types of insights and resources to help guide companies. And for Home From College, you can check us out at HomeFromCollege.com. It's super easy to get started. And of course, if you're thinking about these larger campaigns and strategies, our team works super closely with most companies that are building these out. So we're happy to be a resource on HomeFromCollege.com.
So amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything, for doing what you're doing, and for riding this wave into what's become like a really amazing launch point for thousands, hundreds of thousands of students across the country. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.